Here I have one of the hottest EVs of 2026, the all-new third-generation Nissan Leaf. It is very cold outside, and it's also dark, but more importantly, very cold. And I'm here to see if this car gets anywhere near its EPA estimated range when it's cold outside, when it's in the winter. So it's time for another one of our 70-mile-an-hour range tests. Let's get started. All right, here we are once again with a 70 miles an hour range test, this time on the 2026 Nissan Leaf. This is the all-new third-generation Leaf. It features active thermal management for the battery, a built-in battery heater for when it's cold out, a heat pump climate control system, and 259 plus range, depending on what version you go with. The S Plus, which is not the one that I'm currently in, is rated for 303 miles on the EPA cycle, with a starting price with delivery of right around $32,000. I'm in a Platinum Plus, EPA rated at 259 miles of range, though people have been getting higher than that. And at 100% state of charge so far, the car is indicating 266. So, your mileage, of course, will vary, which is why we're doing this test. And what does this test entail? Why do I do it? Why do you care? Well, first off, the EPA obviously rates a car on a very specific cycle. It's roughly 55% city, 45% highway. Some people drive more highway miles than that. Some people drive quicker than what you would around town. So, because of all of that, I like to do a little bit more of an extreme kind of test, which is go onto a high-speed interstate with a speed limit of 70 miles an hour, set the cruise control at 70 miles an hour, and drive the car till it dies. Or, well, as close as possible for it dying. Don't really want to have to wait for a tow truck. That's not entirely cool, but you know what I mean. And today, this test is going to be even more extreme, because it is 45 degrees outside right now. It's only going to get colder, and yeah, it's winter. So it's not as cold as I would have liked to have tested. I would have liked to have tested this car like a week and a half ago when it was like 4 degrees outside. But realistically, I mean, this is going to be a real kind of test on how much range this car actually has. At the end of the test, then, you won't see it in this video, but I'll post the results of... I'll also do a charge curve analysis going from 0% state of charge to 100% state of charge. And I'll share that on the website. So that'll all be there. A link to the website will be in the description. A little bit more about the test. I drive about 50% of the range, turn around, drive back, plug it into a charger that's more capable than the car can take in, and do a charge curve kind of test. This particular vehicle is 400 volts setup. It'll peak at 150 kilowatts, and it has, for the DC fast charging, a NACS or SAEJ3400 connector, also known as the Tesla charger. Unlike other cars with the NACS connector, though, AC charging is still done with a J1772 or a J-plug on the driver's side, which is weird, right? And it's a little bit, there's like 2 cars that are coming out in 2026 that have this setup. One is the Leaf, the Leaf that I'm currently in, and then the other is the Mercedes CLA. Both basically, from my understanding, were under development to use CCS connectors, and then the companies decided they were going to change to NACS. And just to kind of sort things out, they just include 2 charging connectors. Nice thing about this is the level 2, the J-plug, is on the port side, and the DC fast charger is on the starboard side. So it kind of is more garage setup friendly than maybe having it all only on the right side. I'm sure there's some cost savings in offering both having charging doors on both sides, so they don't have to do one body panel special for left-hand drive markets and right-hand drive markets. I'm sure there's some cost savings in all of there, but long story, super duper short, it's got some weird charging. I'll also have a link in the description for a more of a detailed breakdown of this car and its charging. What else? Regarding the test, basically I'll get halfway and then I'll come back. I'll turn the battery heater on. You can actually separately enable the battery heater on this so that you'll get the best performance out of the pack when charging. Right now it's already at the optimal temperature, so maybe I won't have to turn it on. But the idea is a warmer battery charges quicker. As for the test itself, I typically run the climate control at 70 degrees. I'm doing so here. I have the car in eco mode because if you are driving to get the most amount of range, you're probably going to use eco mode, though I am not going to do anything particularly special to eke out any more range. I'm just going to drive the car how a normal person would drive the car. That seems much more valuable than just hypermiling. It's still a fairly difficult, comprehensive test because, again, it's all highway speed, and it's all mostly flat because I live in a flat part of the country. So you may be able to get worse mileage out of this thing than I am, but you're going to have to really kind of work for it. So it's kind of a worst case scenario. If you have friends that are like, well, I don't know if I could have an EV because, well, blah, 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 you can give them a better, more realistic idea of what's going on. As for the car itself, like I said, the S Plus with 303 miles of range starts at $32 with delivery. Fantastic price. $1,000 per mile of range. Best in the business. That being said, the S Plus is missing a couple of features. You may want to go to the next level up. Plus, not the Platinum, but the mid-spec. The mid-specs adds a couple of grand, but does give you the battery heater, does give you the heat pump for the climate control, all the thermal management stuff, all the better stuff, and the upgraded Android-based infotainment system, which just it's faster, it's a bit more responsive, better stuff built in, kind of things like that. Like, it's a better kind of overall experience, I think, when you look through it, for the 20-mile range hit and a couple extra grand in cost. I wouldn't do the Platinum Plus unless you really, 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 really want to, because you go to these big 20-inch wheels, which are less efficient. You get a heads-up display, which is nice. I'm using it right now. And a roof that has an auto-dimming kind of function, similar to what you might see on a Porsche Taycan, which is a really cool thing, but really not necessary. Just kind of adds weight to the car, to be honest. And the Platinum Plus is the only one with the power rear liftgate, which isn't worth the price difference, though it is a nice feature to have. So, recommendation is probably the mid-spec. Throughout this drive, I'm not going to talk for this entire drive because, whoa, that would be a lot of chatting. I am going to occasionally chime in with kind of an update on how the car feels and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, it's a fairly nice place to be. I did notice on some not as great paved roads, the ride's a little bumpier than I would like. So you have to have a higher spring rate on EVs to keep the batteries, lifted up off the ground, basically. So I feel like that's part of the case here, though I've been in some other EVs recently that aren't that much more money that ride better on bumpy pavement. Pavement's smooth, it rides great. Pavement's a little bumpy. I've been in some better. Not nearly as bad as like a Tesla Model 3, but that's where I would say there's probably some room for improvement. What else? Real kind of initially, you're just here along for the ride. I'm going to time-lapse the in-betweens, occasionally check in with an update, a sit-rep, so to speak. But right now, just been driving for a little under 10 minutes, and we've got 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. The battery on board is a 75 kilowatt hour pack, so you do the math. Actually, I'll do the math for you. Just not right now, but at the end. So thanks for coming along on this journey with me. Oh, a song about the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism and how the world was going to be a better place until, yeah. Anyway, sit rep. I am 53 minutes into this drive, 60 miles, 59.9 miles driven. I have 192 miles of indicated range left and 74% state of charge. My average speed, according to the onboard computer, is 67 miles per hour, and I'm getting a rather low 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. But it's worth pointing out, it's 39 degrees Fahrenheit outside. So, yeah. A couple of things that I would like to point out. This car does come standard on all grades with Nissan's first generation ProPilot Assist. So it is a hands-on, eyes-on system, but its lane centering, its lane centering is excellent, and, you know, it's all right having it standard across the board. Puts it in, you know, like Equinox, you can get Super Cruise, but that is a hands-off system, which is nice. But, you know, it kind of puts it a little bit ahead of some of the competition sort of in this price range. So that is always nice to see. What else? The stereo. The stereo sounds pretty good for being a regular kind of old Bose premium, whatever. On a flat EQ curve, it's, you know, it's pretty solid. You know, surprised the previous driver didn't mess with all that EQ-ness. One last thing I think that I'll mention right now is that this is technically a PT2 version of the car. That's an inside baseball term for not the final production version. These initial cars were used in the first launch of the vehicle, so being a PT2, I think it stands for Prototype 2. Long story super duper short, these were the launch cars that everybody drove on the first drive. It's a very representative of the final car. There could be some potential changes between this and the one you see in dealerships, but honestly, I kind of highly doubt it. So, until we check back in, let's keep going. All right, here's another update. About an hour and 7 minutes into it, 77 miles. I just crossed the border into Indiana, where it remains to be flat and cold. It's 38 degrees, 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, still an average speed of 67 miles an hour. 171 miles indicated range left at 67%. Woo! You know, honestly, not a bad experience. I think let's take a little test here quick. So at 70 miles an hour, it's 63 decibels of ambient audio or ambient sound levels. That ain't too shabby. I think I've done a couple other cars, so I'll do some comparisons on those. I should do that more with these on these types of drives, but honestly, super quiet. I guess there's a little bit of wind noise coming from the wing mirrors, but not really. As with most modern cars, the loudest noise is the tires. That's not too bad. You could carry on a reasonably decent conversation here. When it comes to this version of the Leaf and the old one, the second gen, like, this really does feel like we've gone from, you know, the primordial ooze of electrification to a standing, walking, upright, fully formed Homo sapien in, like, the Iron Age. Like, it's a pretty big jump. Now, the performance is a little bit better. Like, it's not... The old car was pretty quick, all things considered. This isn't that much quicker, but the tech on board... yes, the last gen did have ProPilot Assist. This has the same ProPilot Assist, but everything just feels a lot newer. The new infotainment system is excellent, I think. One funny thing about this new infotainment system that I noticed is that it will, the power button and the volume control will automatically start and stop recording of my DJI Pocket 2, which is really weird. I've never had an infotainment system do that before, so it must be communicating something with the software on my phone to trigger something, but it's weird. So I had to completely disconnect my phone, and now listening to just Sirius, which is fine. Sirius is fine. It's not my favorite thing in the world because the audio quality is mediocre, but, you know, it's better than, I guess, listening to myself talk. Speaking of, we are about to talk myself through this toll plaza at 5 miles an hour. And onward and upward, I guess. That's weird. I've never had to wait that long for a flippin' toll booth. Those are new, but not fancy looking. Anywho, onwards and upwards through northern Indiana, famous for, I guess, I don't know, probably nothing, because it's just the road you have to drive to get to Chicago. That's not fair to the people of Indiana. You know, there's South Bend and Tire X there, and there's, you know, Notre Dame and all of that. So, but whatever. Northern Indiana is the area, the flat area you have to drive through to get to Chicago. All right, we are at the turnaround point, which is exit 121. Just put in the destination to the computer, and it says that we should have 114 miles to that destination, which is the charging station we started at, and we should arrive with a 4% state of charge. Interestingly enough, the onboard computer says that I only have 108 miles of range left, so sure. Though I do have a 52% state of charge now, so it would make sense that I would make it with some percentages left. Which is a good sign. Don't want to run out. But let's get resituated and see where we end up. So once we get back on the highway here, I'll then check in just before we get to our charging station, unless something really weird happens, which is always a possibility, you know. But I'm not expecting too many issues, other than maybe this toll plaza not recognizing my Easy Pass because I just went through it. Sometimes if you hit it again too quickly, it's like, no, we don't know what you're talking about. Um, of course,
Press button for ticket.
it didn't.
Processing. Please wait. Remove ticket.
Love it.
Thank you.
Love it when technology doesn't work. It's my favorite thing in the whole wide world. You know? Technology that doesn't work. Anyways, I'll get back up to speed and check back in. So far, this has been a pretty smooth trip. There isn't construction like there is in the summer, so that's been able to help the average speed a little bit. And yeah, reasonably uneventful. So I'll see y'all at the end of this chaotic trip. It's not actually chaotic. Just a real quick check back in. You know how I had to get a ticket? Yeah, I didn't need it. So I don't know how much my Easy Pass is going to get dinged for. Maybe for the full amount of driving across the state. That would kind of stink. But yay, modern technology. Anyway, indicated 73 miles of range left. I've got at least 80 miles to the exit, though the built-in navigation system says that I should be fine by 2% state of charge, so hey. 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, that seems to be what we're going to settle on. Looks like 147 miles in, 2 hours and 12 minutes, 36% left. Woo! Exterior temperature is 35 degrees. All right, we have a little less than 10 miles until our exit, an indicated 10 miles of range on the car. Looks like we're still approaching a 2% state of charge. We have 5 indicated. A couple of main takeaways. Couple of the main takeaways. The range estimate, the battery percentage estimate at the end of your drive in Google Maps is probably the most accurate one on the car from a distance. Eventually the guessometer caught up, but not quite as quickly as the built-in maps does. So I would trust the built-in maps one more than I would trust the guessometer. 2, the infotainment's pretty... This is a new one for in Nissan EVs. It's pretty responsive. In some ways I like the music sort of interface that they have here. I wish there were more presets shown on the main stage. There's a lot of kind of just open sort of gap of stuff that could be put there. Sounds alright. It's not the best, but it sounds pretty good, all things considered, especially being a Bose system, and Bose systems tend to not sound all that great. So this is pretty good. Keep the levels flat, and you're pretty good. It does have the headrest speakers in this trim too, which is nice, but not something I think is strictly necessary. As for the efficiency, 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour seems to be just what we're going to get. Right now, the temperature is 36 degrees. I've seen it as high as 40, as low as 35. So I can't complain too much. The EPA estimated range is 259 miles. I'm about to hit 219 right now. So you're only losing, you're only losing like 30%, but it's the middle of winter, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. With 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, 75 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's what, 225-ish range, give or take. Yeah, I'll do all the math here at the end for you, but 30, 40, 50 miles of range you lose in the winter. That's just kind of what happens. This is much more efficient than the last Leaf because of the better heating, and I've been running the battery heater and everything else too. So really, it's for an EV, a fairly extreme test. So maybe I'll retest in the summer. Maybe the press fleet will get a S Plus, which is the longest range model. I'd like to test this with the 18-inch wheels. Similar test in better weather. But really, if you're going to live with this year-round, it's plenty. I mean, it really is plenty of range for most people most of the time. So I wouldn't get too caught up on the reduction here. But when I drove the car briefly last summer, I was getting 4 miles per kilowatt hour. And that was actually, I thought, a little low for what I've seen some other people get. So, you're losing a mile per kilowatt hour or more in the winter. Just keep that in mind. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but some of you are going to watch this and be like, well, no, that's just not enough range. So, okay, well, that's you if you decide that's not for you. But my biggest complaint, honestly, this car is the ride quality. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad. But it's bouncier than I expect it to be on pavement that is not pristine. Now, most of this Ohio Turnpike pavement and Indiana Toll Road pavement has been pristine, so not super bumpy or concerned with, but, the seat comfort, it's the only thing I didn't really talk about. Seats are a little hard initially when you sit on them. But I've noticed that with all of Nissan's air quote zero gravity seats, which tend to be a little stiffer of a seat, but long-term seat comfort is pretty solid. And the same applies here. Yeah, maybe when you initially sit in, you're like, this fabric's a little harder. It's kind of like a firm mattress, but at the end of the day, it's really comfortable on a longer trip. So big ups for that. Hard to really not find too much to dislike. Yes, I would like the charging solution to be a little bit better integrated. Yes, I'd like to see a little bit faster peak charging speed, but $30,000, I can overlook all of those things. So yeah, competition in the space is getting pretty heated. I've seen some Equinox EVs sell for under 30 at certain dealers. So I've seen this car, I've seen higher spec versions of this car in the 35s to low 30s. Expect the S Pluses to be sort of in that 30 range for retail, maybe a little bit less. Really, without the tax credit, yeah, I know it stinks the tax credit's gone, but I think what Nissan managed to do with this was they knew they weren't going to have the tax credit. They knew that they had to figure out ways to make this car affordable, and within those constraints, were able to engineer a really good car. And that's where we end up. So I'll pull in here in a couple of miles to get the last calculations, which I'll put up on the screen. But, thanks again for riding along with me on this trip. I always appreciate you watching. I know that can be kind of boring, the middle things. You can probably just skip to the end and see the results, and that's fine. That's cool, because I want to make sure that people are getting all of the information they need. So, thanks. Appreciate it. As you can see, all things considered, it's not that bad. Yes, you lose range in the winter, but it's not as much as you're used to. And for the rest of the time, you've got a fairly solid EV. Even with the reduced range in the weather, you still have 2.5, 3 hours of 70 miles an hour driving range, which is enough that you're probably going to want to stop and use the restroom anyways to recharge. And with the native NACS connector on board now, you can charge at all of these Tesla supercharging stations that live along the Ohio Turnpike, the Indiana Toll Road, and other major thoroughfares like that. If you like videos like this, hit the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up. I appreciate it. Until next time, take care. Can't say I've seen charging numbers to the nearest decimal place before like this. Huh. Just unplugging from the Tesla connector here, and I've noticed, oh hey, somebody had a good time.